Good morning, good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are in the world, and welcome back to Rebel, Reject, Create, the podcast all about how to be more creative. And today we're going to speak to Monique Pelser, who is an artist based in the Cape in South Africa. But I mean, apart from that, she gets up to all sorts of other interesting stuff, which we're going to talk about. So, Monique, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm excited to chat.
All right, great. So obviously you are an artist, a fine artist, but we're not really going to talk about your art today because you also get up to a bunch of really interesting things where you're helping other people discover the mechanism behind how you make art. In other words, creativity.
Right. Yes, I do that. And in fact, I work with children from the age of about 2.5. I prefer three.
Right?
Um, uh, from ages about 3 to 5, and again from 6 to 10, and then 10 to 21. Put them in a bracket,
Hmm.
and then 21 to 99.
Right. Okay. So, you know, a thing that gets talked about on this podcast a lot is the that whole study that was done by George Land, the same guy who did the NASA creative thinking studies, that says like 98% of children are creative geniuses and only 2% of adults could be considered the same. Do you see that in your work?
Yeah, look, I would absolutely cut out the word genius because it's to me it sets up an unrealistic expectation. But what I would say is that every body is inherently creative,
Hmm.
and every child hasn't developed um, the process of being externally examined yet and started to gradually shut down, or let me say mediate their individual and individualized creative expression.
Wow. Okay. So it's the external gaze that kind of damps these fires, do you think?
I think it's the internalized external gaze.
Right.
So I
Right.
think it's the inner voice that starts to go, no, this is wrong. No, this is right. This is good. This is bad. Barbie looks like this. Ninja Turtles look like that. Um, and so we are creatures of habit, but we're also we imitate each other
Hmm.
in order to fit in. And so we feel, in my experience, unsafe when we start to really get creative, because as we move into the creative space, we go into the unknown.
Right. And we no longer look like anybody else. Yeah.
Right, which can sometimes be a little freaky.
Yeah. And so, okay, so you're sitting with a room full of, let's just go with the 10 to 21-year-olds, and you're running into this judgment. How do you help people overcome that?
So the first thing that I do is I I align the workshop or the class or the space to the needs and the interests of the group. So basically, what that means is, I'll give a great example today. A tiny little one who's 2.5 arrived to listen to the story of Henny Penny and the acorn landing on her head, but he just ended up just by chance having an acorn on his trousers, like a little picture of an acorn on his trousers. So um, I matched the acorn falling on the head with the acorn on the trousers, and then we all started to talk about the kinds of animals we like, or the kind of farm animals that we like. So they then started to participate in the content, and then I introduced them to the creative process. So
Hmm.
I had a buy-in from them, and then once I had their attention and their buy-in, so to speak, their full participation, then I started to introduce creative play. And or experimentation. And what I would do with 10 to 21 year olds is, if, say, for example, we were working with mixing colors, and I started to notice somebody in the group starts to say to themselves, this is wrong. This is not orange. right? Then what I would do is I would mix it myself. And I would take yellow and red, and I'd start to mix it, and then this one would be super red, this one would be too yellow, then in between, and I would what's the word? Demonstrate. I would demonstrate that it always goes a little bit cuckoo bananas. And I use the word cuckoo bananas a lot. I use humor quite a lot in my classes, and I also, or in my sessions, classes, workshops, but I also have a song, and I have a terrible voice. You're not going to record me singing it, but the words are, nothing is wrong, everything is awesome. Nothing is wrong, everything is awesome, just to help people to feel a little safer when the creative side and the organizational side are clashing, and they start to get critical with themselves.
Wow. I once had a coach say to me that the reason why so many people have distanced themselves from their own creativity is because they've experienced so much shame around
Yeah,
it in the
yeah,
past,
yeah.
which is quite a
Yeah, and
emotion, right?
yeah, shame is a powerful emotion. I sometimes think, a way to lighten it up is to joke around, but also to invite. So let's say I'm working with like 20, 10, no, maybe let's say 16 to 21 year olds and older. They would be able to have the conceptual capacity to um, to speak about the inner critic or to meet the inner critic, right?
Yeah.
And then they could draw the inner critic or they could give voice to the inner critic. And then I always say, don't fight the inner critic, you know, meet the inner critic and say to the inner critic, like my inner critic, my own personal inner critic is terrified that I'm going to not be on time, and I'm not going to do the dishes, and because I can get really lost in my art making process, and I've stood people up accidentally, and I've missed deadlines and all this kind of stuff because I go into this like ooh, creative space. So my inner critic is terrified of that, and makes me excuse me. My inner critic is terrified of that and makes me extremely anxious. So sometimes I have to say, thank you so much for the structure. And now I'm just going to take this time. I've set my alarm. Inner critic, you've checked it 15 times. Now I can do my studio practice. So it's just about incorporating that voice rather than because in my experience, this is not so light, but shame is a powerful emotion, and any kind of suppression of shame
Just
really
amplifies it.
rears up. It's aggressive. It can become aggressive, which
Yeah.
is a killer of creativity.
Right. Yeah. So why are you so committed to doing this, to helping these people unlock this creativity within themselves?
I'm not 100% sure, to be honest, what drives me, but I'm really driven. Um, you know what it is? I think it's beautiful. I think it's an incredibly beautiful process. I had the absolute privilege of being a university studio practice lecturer. Let me just give you a little bit of a background. I have the absolute privilege of growing up in a country where I was called arty farty, and artistic practice was shunned and mocked. And I'm extremely left field artistic personality, creative personality, and um, I ended up only going to university later, studying a Master of Fine Arts, and I stepped very fortunately into a position at Rhodes University as a studio practice lecturer. I remember a lot of people saying to me, like, was that like a proper job? Like, what do you actually do?
Yeah.
And what I noticed, what I started to notice about it, and this is part of my critic. See, my critic can be quite helpful sometimes.
Mm.
What my inner critic started to do is started to see, and I started to analyze and see that in studio practice, young artists and graduated artists, what we've had to do is create a body of work a body of paintings, a body of illustrations, photographic body of work, sculptures, whatever, conceptual visual art, right? Then what you have to do at postgraduate level is you have to write a dissertation, and that dissertation has to generate new knowledge and it has to sit in the academic archives. Speaking about the body of work that you've made and situating it on the timeline, within contextualizing it in the local, national, international um, history of art.
Right.
And what I started to notice is that these students are the only people that I know that can go from formless to have generated this incredible research body of work. And it's this flexibility. It's a hell of a painful experience.
Yeah.
But when they pull it together, and when they pull it together well, it's pretty phenomenal. Then I noticed that during COVID, when everybody was really struggling with everything going a bit formless around them, all my artistic friends and family and the artists were all like, oh, this is how we normally live. We live with a little bit of chaos in our lives. We spend loads of time at home in our pajamas and work from home.
Yeah.
We live in a little uncertainty. And so
Yeah.
then what I started to notice is that all my friends during COVID, who are artists, really managed to roll with the punches. And I think that that's the thing. I think that they were able to go, oh, what have you just sent me? And then sat with it for a little bit and managed to move and change direction
Yeah.
with it. So I think yeah, it develops a great flexibility.
Yeah. I think when I talk to people about it these days, I think that's one of my most important messages is that in order to be creative, you have to let go of what you already know, because if you hang on to that too tight, you remain in certainty. And in order to discover new things, you have to get into uncertainty. You have to get into vague, gray, many options, and people who, I mean, artists are the best example, but I think actually people like inventors and entrepreneurs are similar in that they're able to do
Absolutely.
what they do because they can step into that space between.
It is exactly that. It's the ability to step into the space between and also to sit in uncertainty and sit with a little bit of mess.
Yeah,
I love to work. I personally draw, illustrate in ink pens, just like almost like fine liners.
yeah,
And I like to work quite quickly because I like to mess around on the edge of error and sit with that. And in my teaching, I find a lot of fear around making marks.
yeah,
And I think there's a certain fear of error. And I think artists have developed the ability. I want to be clear about that. I don't think we inherently have that ability. I think we've developed the ability to mess around. Think of like a band jamming in a rehearsal sesh, and somebody makes a mistake, and they're like, "Cool, what was that?" You
yeah,
know? And it's grabbing at those mistakes and turning those mistakes into something. So I like to work with ink, with entrepreneurs and leaders and thinkers, and then sit with error and see how to commit to error and work with it.
right. Yeah, because I mean, the moment you start talking about leaders and business people, errors are just not tolerated. We want certainty, we want repeatability, and that leads to its own kind of mess, really, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think also something else you said just now about artists working in uncertainty and working in the gray area. I think sometimes because art world can also be an industry, right?
Yep.
And there are artists that have to produce the similar work to stay
Hmm.
recognizable.
Yeah.
and repeat their style. And then there are some artists that have developed a nuance of how to experiment and stay in that gray area and flexible within their recognizable style.
Yeah.
And then there's some artists that just love to play and make things, and constantly step into the unknown.
Yeah.
And yeah, I think I do agree with you that entrepreneurs and artists are similar in that way, that they can take they have the ability in their nervous systems to kind of step into risk
Yeah.
and project into risk.
Yeah. That like, well, what if we did this differently? What if we
Yeah.
tried this instead of that?
You know Neil Gaiman, he
Yeah.
said, don't quote me on this, but something along the lines, I'll paraphrase him. He said something along the lines of, do you know when you get to that point where you go, what if that happened? Then go there.
Yeah.
Then go to that point of that maybe happening. And then at the edge there go, oh my gosh, imagine if he went that way now that he's here. And then you take it that way. And that's how you create new space. That's how you move into new edges.
Yeah. What would the world look like if more people came and did your classes and were able to embrace this?
The world, what would the world look like? The world would be a much better place.
But
No, I'm
why, Monique?
joking.
Why?
No, I'm joking.
No,
I
I'm
think
not. I think you're right. But I mean,
I mean, gosh, could you imagine if I could have such a big scope? But look, I just want to say that from my own experience, as an artist, it's extremely rewarding to come up with an idea and then go along that arc and journey and then materialize something. Generally, it doesn't look anything like you imagined over here, but you land up over there and you've made something that is substantial. And sometimes it's not substantial. Sometimes you've just made something.
yeah,
And there's something about participating in life when you are participating in the creative process.
yeah,
It's the simple metaphor of planting a seed and watching it grow and nurturing one's creativity, right?
yeah,
So, in retrospect, looking back at the people that I've worked with up until now, I have I've seen spontaneous dance parties crack open after, a 2-day workshop after we drew left hand, right hand, and we sort of like worked a bit of flexibility and play. I've seen some people who really fundamentally believe that they are not creative and they cannot draw make the most incredible artwork. And yeah, and I've just seen incredible flexibility. I've also seen that if you give little children the space, and when I speak about little children, I speak about everybody, because everybody is that inner, I don't want to say inner child, but everyone's still that same person they were when they were two.
yeah,
And if you give that child freedom to explore on the page, they don't stop exploring.
right.
They
Yeah,
continue. It's creative practice is abundant, and creativity comes
self-perpetuating.
from creativity.
Yeah,
So I do think it's generous. And I often say to the little children, don't get jealous, get inspired. And if you're inspired, if somebody's copying you, it's such a compliment. And look how amazing their work is now that you showed them, and then they grow from that, and then you grow from them.
yeah,
So I think that there's a kind of I think in the world we are so scared of loss. We're so scared of running out of money. We're so scared of running out of time. There's not enough time. There's not enough money. I'm too old. And creativity kind of change like that, it debunks that.
yeah,
That's not true.
yeah.
That's not true.
The way I phrase it most often is that it actually gives you agency. When you go from nothing to here is a thing, that is agency. That's the definition of agency. You've done it, and that's an incredibly empowering and liberating feeling, isn't it?
100%. And I have to say, I work with these two people simultaneously. I've been working with a 2-year-old and a 72-year-old. And I've seen the 72-year-old and the 2-year-old, for my own sanity, I keep the same theme every week
Right.
so that I'm working with ink and water and mixing colors with the babies and with the adults.
Yeah.
And I've seen both of them develop equally, take agency for their process in the same week.
Yeah.
It's pretty amazing.
That's amazing. All right. Monique, it's been great speaking to you. I love your enthusiasm. You're just bursting out of you. What for you is the most important thing that you'd want to leave the audience with? Like what's the most important thing about what you're doing and the message that you're sharing?
I think that nothing is wrong and everything is awesome when it comes to your creative practice. Also, that it doesn't take a lot. You can draw with your finger in the sand. You can take a Croxley book like this, one of these little books, and a pen that you use, and you can make drawings on these like this. Um, it's not it's not a big deal.
Right.
The Making something isn't a big deal. I think there's some kind of preconceived idea that you need very fancy watercolor paper and oil paints that nobody knows how to use or have used them once and they're so sticky they don't like them and they're all sitting in someone's cupboard. We have a process where we say, everybody take out the book that's sitting in the bottom of the drawer that you love so much but don't want to draw on and use it from cover to cover, and then get another one.
Yeah.
So I think it's a lot more. I think I'd like to leave with by saying that creative practice is a lot more accessible than people think, and
Awesome.
just do it.
Just do it. Monique, thank you so much for your time and for coming on to the show. Been awesome speaking to you. For everybody listening, you'll find the links to Monique's site and her works in the show notes below, so do go and check her out and see what she's up to. And don't forget that there is always another Rebel Reject Create episode coming soon. So get out there, be more creative, and take agency.